Hi, welcome to my video on the review of solving linear equations single variable. Every review that I do at the end of each unit, I design it so that you can treat it as a quiz. So notice I have one of 5 pages, so if you want to get 5 blank pages and record the answers to your questions as you do it. So on page 1, you could copy a total out of 50, and then when you get your final total done on each page, add them all up and put the mark of a 50, divide 50 into this numerator to get a decimal, and then move your decimal 2 places to the right to get your percent. But we know, or should know, that out of 50, so if I get 40 out of 50, that means I get 80 out of 100, so I'll have 80%. So let's start the review on solving linear equations single variable. So page 2, if you pause your video and you can work each question out, and then when you get the answer to each question done, press play and see if you have it right. You can do that for each question, or you can do it for the whole page. But when you're finished, record the number correct on the top of each of these right here, and get the total on each page. And that will give you an idea how well you understand this unit. Let's start. Classify as linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic, quintic. Linear is degree 1, quadratic is degree 2, cubic is degree 3, quintic or quartic is degree 4, and quintic is degree 5. Now, today, or in this video, this unit, we're doing linear equations. The quadratics, the cubics, the quartics, the quintics will come as the grades go by, or as math increases in levels. Degree, let's look at A. That's a 3, 2, 0. So that's the degree 3 is the highest. So this is a cubic. B, that's a 1 and a constant, so the highest degree is 1, so this is a linear equation. Notice the equation has an equal sign. C is a 5, 4, 3, the highest degree here is 5, so that's a quintic. And D is X is a square, a 1 and a constant, so that's the highest degree is a 2, so that's a quadratic. A quadratic is done a lot, especially in grade 11. E is a 4, 2, 1, and a 0, so the highest degree is a 4, so it's a quartic. Quartic. So you can learn them, but again, you'll see them as you go on in your math. Which equation is linear in one variable? Now, one variable. So this is 2 variables here, x and y, so it's not that one. This is linear in one variable. It's one variable because it has a y, and the degree is 1, so this is the right answer. This one has a 1 variable of x, but it's 2 is the highest degree, so that's a quadratic. And this one has 1 variable, but it has a 3, so that's a cubic. But the answer is B to this. Let's solve each equation, keeping it simple, and we work it up as we go through the review. 3a, it says solve for x, so double negative is a positive, and the x's are going on the left side, numbers on the right, so when we move the plus 2 over, it becomes a minus, so that gives us a 6. And B, that's a multiplication. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we divide each side by negative 5. They cancel out. 1 and 1, that gives us 1x, and that gives us a negative 3. C, remember the x's go on the left, so the 2x stays there, and the minus 6, or subtract 6, becomes a plus 6 on the right side. We simplify and get a negative 14 when we add those two, and then we divide by 2. Again, the 2's cancel out to give me a 1, 1x, and that gives me a negative 7. So 1x, you won't see that around too often, so it's just an x equals negative 7. The 1 is understood. D, the x's are already on the left side and the numbers on the right side, so we add these up, so we get a negative 3x. When we add, we keep the literal coefficient of x, and we add the numbers to get negative 3. Now we have a multiplication, so we divide each side by doing the opposite. They cancel out to give me x, and that's a 7. E, I have a double negative in E, so double negative becomes a positive. X's are on there's the equal sign, so that's okay, that stays positive. This x moves over to become a plus x, and the plus 4 that we have becomes a minus 4 when we transpose it to the opposite side. Change the signs. 10 plus 1, that's a 1 there. 10 plus 1 is 11x, and when we 26 subtract 4 is 22, and 11 times x is 22, so we divide by 11, and the 11's cancel, they give me a 1x, and that gives me a 2. F, we should, because we have many terms on each side, we should simplify each side first. So let's add up the x's to get negative 8x, subtract 6, and the 4x, so 8 subtract 2 is 6. So each side is simplified. Now we have less to transpose, so the x's go on the left. So plus 4 becomes a minus 4. And the numbers go on the right. So minus 6 becomes a plus 6. Add, you get a negative 12x equals 12. And because that's a multiplication, what number multiplied by 12 to give negative 12 to give you 12? And the answer is negative 1. But if you divide, you can. They cancel, and you can see that I'll get a negative 1. Again, if you see the answer right away, you just put a negative 1 right there, because that's a negative 1 times negative 12 to give you 12. You don't have to divide, but doing the division just helps. Now, what score did you get? Did you do one question at a time and get your answer right? And doing one question at a time, as in all my videos when you practice, is you can see your mistake, you can look it over, you can see my workings and say, oh, I got this question wrong, where did I go wrong? Remember, doing the workings helps you to see where you made the mistakes. And we learn by our mistakes. Number 4, solve for x. So we have brackets. So in BEDMAS, we have to get, we can't do anything with the inside of this because they're on light. That's on light, and that's on light. We have no exponents, so we have to multiply. So negative 3 times these two, negative 6x plus 9. Negative 3 times those two. And that's a subtraction. We can add on the opposite. So the opposite of a plus x is a minus x. The opposite of a negative 2 is a plus 2. Or we can put a 1 right here if you want. Call that a negative 1 times that. So negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is plus 2. Two choices. Add on the opposite. It's the same as multiplying by negative 1. Negative 4 times x plus 1 is negative 4x minus 4. Negative 4 times x, negative 4 times 1. And plus the 9. Now we have two sides. Let's simplify each side first. Easier and less to transpose. Negative 7x plus 11. And this one is a negative 4x plus 5 when you simplify. And the x's go to the left. Minus becomes a plus 4x. And the 5 is there. The 11 moves to become a negative. And add this up, we get a negative 3x equals negative 6. And we divide. Now we can see that what? 2 times 3 is 6. So the answer to this is 2 right away without even working it out. You can see it. Divide by negative 3. They cancel out to give me x equals 2. Now this one says solve and check. So if you got this one right, you got 3 marks. Okay? Solve this one and check it. So I wrote it down right here. I'm going to solve it. And then I'm going to check it by plugging into the original. So I wrote 2 of them down to save time. So let's multiply 2 by x and 2 by negative 4. Let's multiply 5 by x, 5x, 5 by negative 1, negative 5. Done. Now let's simplify the left side. That gives me a 7x minus 13. Add up the x's, add up the numbers. Now the number 13 has to go to the right side because variables on the left, numbers on the right. And that gives me 7x equals 14. And divide by 7, again, 7 times what number gives you 14? You see the answer is 2. So x equals 2 without ever dividing. Now that we have a 2, we're going to check it. So if you got this right, give yourself 2 marks. Now we're going to check. That means we're going to take 2 and put it into the original equation. So 2 goes into place of x. We're checking it. 2 is subbed in for x. And when we check this out, we should have, this side should become, that's a 1 right here. So this side should become 1 when I'm finished. So we do the inside the brackets because of PEMDAS, and that's a -2. And we do the inside of this bracket, so that's a 1. And PEMDAS says, let's see, PEMDAS. And when we put the 2 in, we worked out the inside the brackets. Done. There's no exponents to do. Now we have to do multiply to simplify because we do the multiplication division left to right. So that gives me a -4, and that gives me a 5. And that's a 1 there, keeps coming down. -4 plus 5 is 1. 1 equals 1, so that means that x equals 2 is correct. Give yourself 2 marks if you did the verification checking right. Now, is -7 a solution to this equation? So that means if it's a solution, that means it's a root. That means if a -7 is subbed in the place of x, just like here, and it works out to be true, then -7 is a solution. If the end result is not both sides equals same, then it's not a solution. So here we go. We're going to put -7 in the place of x. So -7 is being subbed in the place of x. And again, notice that's 5 times x, 5 times -7. We have to do the inside of the brackets first because that's PEMDAS. And that gives us a -4, and that gives us a -8. Again, PEMDAS, we work out the inside of the brackets first before we ever multiply, divide, or square. So those brackets are done. So if I only do one at a time, so I did the inside the brackets. Now I have to obey multiplication division. So I multiply those two, and multiply them. So that gives us a -20 minus 16, -35, subtract 1. So I did the multiplication. Now I'm going to work these two, and that gives us a -36. And a -35 subtract 1 is a -36. Is this a solution? Yes. So if you checked it and you said yes, give yourself 2 marks. Number 7, we have equations with fractions. Now, the best way I like to handle fractions, and you're going to do it later on when you do rational expressions, you're going to do it when you do calculus. The best way to handle, I find, is to find the LCD. The LCD of these fractions here, up to 2 of them, is a 6. 6 is the least common denominator. So what I do is that I multiply both sides by 6. 6 times this side. 6 times this side. But multiplying both sides by 6 to keep it balanced is the same as multiplying each part. So if you multiply each part by 6, like I'm doing here, so if you multiply 6 by 1/3 x, 6 by 2, 6 by -1/6x, multiply 6 by the 8, and there it is, all 6's. So if you do this step first, then you have to put the 6 through each one. So you can move the 6 through each one of these first, knowing this is what you're doing here. Now, every denominator should cancel. If you have the right LCD, every denominator should divide into the LCD. So 3 into 6 goes 2. 2 times 1x is 2x. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 into 6 goes once, and that gives me -1x and -x. 6/8 are 48. So all my denominators cancel, so I have it done right. So 2x, that's a minus, becomes a plus, and 48, that's a plus 12, becomes a minus 12. Add 2, and that's a 1. 2 and 1 is 3x, equals 36. And what number multiplied by 3 gives me 36? That's a 12. Let's see, let's divide by 3. 3's cancel. 36 divided by 3 is 12. Again, when you have fractions, multiply by the LCD. Now, this is a special setup here. Remember, this is A over B equals C over D. A over B, that means we can multiply A times D equals B times C. A times D equals B, that's the B times C, that's cross multiplying. So we can do that here because we have two fractions equal. So 5 times x minus 1 equals 3 times x plus 1. Cross multiply. 5 times this one, 3 times this one. Then you multiply that out. 5x minus 5 equals 3x plus 3. X's go to the left. When they do, you change the sign. Numbers go to the right, and you change the sign. So plus 3, minus 5, plus 5. That gives me a 2x equals 8. And 2 times what number gives you 8? The answer is 4, but we'll just do the extra step. Cancel. Divide both sides by 2, we get a 4. And you get 2 marks for each one, and do a total on the page. And hopefully you're doing okay. Hopefully you learned the unit, because the review that I'm doing, the questions are made up in the order that I had the videos done. So if you know what's done in each of the videos, these questions should be going okay. This is sort of like a test, but it's a self-test. You are the one that decides if you know what you're doing. And number 8, we did a video on equation with decimals. And this is needed later on when we do grade 10, 11 math. And it makes it easier. This is a 1 decimal place. This is 1 decimal place. That's a 1 decimal. And that's a 1 decimal place. So this is a 1 decimal place. All of them. So that means that if you got a 1 decimal place, to remove the decimal, you multiply by 10. Because when you multiply a 1 decimal place by 10, the decimal moves 1 place to the right. And therefore you have an integer, a whole number. So let's multiply, and without writing it down, I'm going to multiply each of these by 10. I'm just putting the 10 right here, just like this. It makes it easier for me to do. Don't have to write it down again, saves time. So if I multiply both sides by 10, the 10 is distributed through each of these, like we did with the fractions. So 10 times 1.2 is a 12x. 10 times decimal 8 is an 8. 10 times decimal 4 is a 4. 10 times 2.4 is 24. Notice the decimal moves 1 place to the right in each of these. Now we have whole numbers, easier to work with, but that's your choice. You could leave the decimals and work the decimals through as if they were whole numbers. But I find this easier to do. It's a skill that you'll need for later on. And that's an 8. 12 minus 4 is 8x. And that's 16 when you subtract. And 8 times 2 is 16, so 2 is the answer. But I'll divide by 8 on each side, and I get x equals 2. If you had a 1 decimal place and a 2 decimal place, you would multiply by 100, because it would take 100 to move the decimal, so you get whole numbers. Number 9, find the value of k if negative 3 is the solution. If a negative 3 is the solution, that means I will put negative 3 in the place of x. And if I put a negative 3 in the place of x, which I have done, notice that's a big bracket, that's a small one. I have to work the inside of this first. So that gives me k times negative 3 is a negative 3k plus the 5. I have to multiply these two. And I can't add these. And inside of this bracket, I get a negative 3 subtract 2. That's a negative 5. So let's multiply now. We have the inside simplified. So 2 times negative 3x. 2 times 5. and negative 5 times k. And solving for k, which is what left, because the x's were replaced with negative 3. Now the k's are treated the same as an x. So I move the k's to the left side. So that's a plus 5k. Move the 10 to the right side, negative 10. Minus becomes a plus, plus becomes a minus. That gives me negative 1k is negative 10. That's a negative 1, notice? So I'll divide each side by negative 1. So I put the 1 in here now to my advantage. Because, see, if you have a negative k equals negative 10, then if you change the signs, you get k is equal to 10 without dividing by negative 1. But if you divide by negative 1, they cancel, and you get 10. So that's just, most people won't divide by negative 1 here. Just say negative k is negative 10. So k is the opposite of negative k. So what's the opposite of negative 10? Is 10. Give yourself 3 marks if you're right. Number 10, solve. I have to BIDMAS. I can't work the inside of these brackets because they're on like terms. Don't have any exponents, so I have to multiply. So I multiply this one and this one. So the 6x stays like that. Multiply 3x minus 12. 3 times x, 3 times negative 4. There's this negative 7x. 4 times 2x, 4 times negative 1. So the multiplication, in other words, we got rid of the numbers outside the brackets. The brackets are gone. Distributive property. Now we simplify each side. So we look at, you can put these together if you want in order. But again, that's a 9 minus 7, that's a 2. So if you want to go 6x plus 3x minus 7x minus 12 first, and then add them up to get this, your choice. But I just look at the x's and I add them up. And over here, I'm adding up the x's. 8 subtract 6 is the 2x minus the 4. So I have my terms combined on each side. Now I'll transpose. 2x minus 2x equals negative 4 plus 12. 2x minus 2x is a 0 equals 8. We didn't get x equals 4 or 7 or anything like that, so we didn't get one answer. When we have 0 equals 8, that means that this equation has no solutions. No matter what it means is no matter what value of x you sub in this equation, it will never, both sides of the left and the right will never be the same. So there's no values of x to make this equation true. And that happens when we have 0 equals 8. If you work this out, this is further work now. If you work that out and you had 0 equals 0, that means there would be many solutions in this equation. The 1, the 2, the 3, the half, the quarter, all values of x would work. If you had 0 equals 0, that happens when the x's go to the left, numbers go to the right, you get 0 equals 0, you would have many solutions. But this time, we have 0 equals 8, that's no solution, no values of x. And if you had up like up here, x equals 2, that means there's one solution. Only 2 will make this equation true. Let's continue. Number 11, find the measure of angle AOB. To get the measure of angle AOB, I got to get the value of x. And I know that when we have two lines intersecting like that, this angle right here equals this one, and this angle equals this one, because the vertically opposite angles or vertical angles are equal. So those two are equal to each other because they're vertically opposite angles across from each other when two lines intersect. So the x's go to the left, and the numbers go to the right. Plus 6x minus 6x minus 10. Oop, that's a 10. Oops, I almost made an error. Minus 10 is a plus 10. So 9 minus 6 is 3x. 8 plus 10 is 18. And I divide by 3. But I know that 3 times 6 is 18. So I know the answer to this is 6. Now I wish to get the measure of the angle. So angle AOB is 6x plus 8. So if I sub in 6 in the place of x, notice x is 6, so I put 6 in the place of x. Now I have to simplify. I have to multiply first before I add, so that's 36 plus 8. So that adds up to be 44. So the measure of this angle is 44 degrees. I didn't put degrees around, but you know that we're talking about angles, so that's 44 degrees is the answer. How many marks did you get? So if you got the equation right, you got 1 mark, and if you got it worked out correctly, you got 2 marks. If you subbed it in and got there, you got 3 marks. So judge yourself. If you got it all, if you got it correct with 3, total up the page to see what you have out of total on that page. And let's continue. Last page. How well are you doing? Hopefully you understand what I taught in the units, unit by unit. The units, the videos are worked through one video at a time. Learn the first one to get to the second one to get to the third, because it's all developed to help you understand. Solve this equation for b. That means b got to be on the left. If we solve for x, x is on the left. Now I got to keep b on the left. There's the equal sign. So the b is right there. So that's an ab equals h plus y. So all the other variables, that's pluses and minuses, that have to go to the right. This is a multiplication, so I keep the a with the b. Now, that's a multiplication, and I'm solving for b, so I have to divide both sides by a. The a's cancel, so b is equal to h plus y over a. Or, that's perfect, but the a, you can also write h over a plus y over a, because a can go into both of these, but they don't cancel. So you can have this h plus y all over a, or you can have h over a plus y over a. Either or, your choice. Most people would just leave it like that. H plus y over a. How many marks did you get? You get it right? 13, we're going to solve for t. That means t got to be on the left, and all the rest of the variables got to be on the right. So here we go. We have a multiplication. 6p times t, 6pt. Done. 6p times 4 is 24p. Now we got to multiply negative 3 by pt, negative 3pt. Negative 3 by p is negative 3p. So we said we're solving for t. So that means all the terms with the t's have to move to the left side. So 6pt, already there. This one is moving over to become a plus pt, equal sign. And that's a negative 3p, so that goes on the right because that doesn't have a t. This is 24p, so it moves over to become negative 24p. So the terms with the t's are on the left, and all the rest terms are on the right. Now, these two happen to be the same, so we will add 6 plus 3 is 9pt. And these two happen to be the same, so that's a negative 27p. Continue. So we treat we're solving for t, so that's a multiplication, so the opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we divide by 9p on each side, which makes sense. That means that t is all alone on the left side, which is what we want. And we divide here. Negative 27 divided by 9 is a negative 3, and the p's cancel out, because p divided by p is 1. So that's a negative 3. Give yourself 3 marks if you worked it out. Part way through, you get 1 or 2 marks if you didn't get it fully right. 14, solve for x. That means the x has got to go on the left side. That means the numbers or the other variables go on the right side. So that's an x, so it moves over here to be with this x. These are two terms that cannot be added now because they're unlike. Not like right here. That's a pt, they can be added to get a 9 because they're the same. But you can't add these. So how are we going to solve it for x? Oh, I remember. I have to take out the x by factoring. That's an a plus b. And that's a 2. That's a 2. And because I factored the x out, because it's a GCF, x is in each term, take the x out. So ax divided by x is a, bx divided by x is b, and check back. X times a, ax. X times b, bx. Now we have very similar. We have a multiplication, and the opposite of multiplying by ab is to divide both sides by ab. And if you divide by AB and multiply AB, they cancel out to give you 1. So the answer is 2 all over A plus B. Give yourself 3 marks if you worked it out. If you move the B's over like this, then give yourself 1 mark. If you divide by AB, give you another mark. If you got this final answer, 3 marks. Now I have number 15 as an extra. Extra means something a little bit different. But doing something different helps us because you try it and see what happens. Let the math flow. Don't be scared of it. Some people are afraid of it. What I do when I do math, I like to work it through and see if I get it right. If I don't, I'll look back and see where I made mistakes. Learn by your mistakes. The areas of a rectangle and a square are equal. Okay? The square has a side of x plus 2. A rectangle is x plus 10 by x minus 2. So that's the length of the sides of the rectangle. That's the length and the width there. Find the dimensions of each. So in order to find the dimensions of these, you can say, well, that's the dimension. Well, what I mean by when I say dimensions, I mean find the numerical dimensions, not x's. So we have a square. And a square is like this. And a square has all sides equal. So the square is s squared. So it's the side of a square is x plus 2. Okay. And a rectangle, to form a rectangle is like this. And a rectangle has those two sides equal and those two sides equal. But there's right angles up in the corners. So a rectangle is the area is the length times the width. And x plus 10 is the length, and x minus 2 is the width. Why? Because when you put x, if you think about it, you don't have to really worry about it, but just to make sure, if you put 4 in here, you get 14. If you put 4 in here, then you get 2. So you can see that's this number here. 10 added to the number is higher than subtract 2 from the number. Okay, so let's work these out. Now we can go with, write this down, x plus 2, x plus 2. We can do a FOIL, which is first, outside, inside, last. And that becomes x squared plus 4x plus 4. And the FOIL on this, because it's 2 by number, first, x squared, outside, negative 2x, inside, plus 10x, last is negative 20. So that gives me x squared plus 8x minus 20. Now, we have that we said the areas were equal. So that means that x squared plus 4x plus 4, which is the area of the square, is equal to the area of the rectangle. So what we're doing is making the two of these equal to each other. And when we're solving for x, we move the x's to the left side. So the x squared is there. This one is moving over alongside of the like term. That's a 4x. And this x is moving over to become negative 8. The negative 20 is there, and that's a 4 becomes a minus. So all the x's are on the left, all the numbers are on the right. But when I move them, I group them. Notice that x squared minus x squared cancels out. So this is the first time you might have seen this, but it's just different. You say, what am I doing with a square? I haven't seen a square before. But in this case, they canceled out. So that means you have negative 4x equals negative 24. And you can see that's a 6 multiply. But let's divide by negative 4 on each side. And we got x is equal to 6. They cancel out, remember? We'll give you a 1. So if 6 is the answer, then the square has a side of x plus 2. So if x is 6, 6 plus 2 gives me 8. So the square has a side of 8. And the rectangle has sides of x plus 10. So that gives me 6 plus 10. Oh, that's a 10. That gives me 16. And the other side is an x minus 2. So that's 10 minus 2. And that gives me 8. So a rectangle got a 16 for the length and a width of 8. So notice, put a 6 back here, you get 16. Put a 6 in here, you get, we said, that, oh, now hack it. I had to put a 6 in, I put a 10 there. I don't know why I put a 10. I've probably seen that 10 there. That's a 4. So, sorry for that. Just check my work. Now I'm going to check it again now. So I have 6 plus 10 is 16, and 6 minus 2 is 4. So that's the sides of 16 and 4. Let's check. If this is a square, so that's an 8. So what's an 8 times an 8? 64. And that's a rectangle. That's the length times the width. And that's a 64. Okay, everything is okay. If you multiply the length times the width here, the two sides together, you get 64. If you multiply the length and the width, you get 64. So that means that the value of x is 6 is okay. And the sides are 8 for the square, 16 and 4 for the rectangle. And I checked it by multiplying the numbers to get the areas. And if I did have an error here just then, and I didn't correct it, when I checked it back by putting it in here, I wouldn't have got 64 here. And I said, I made a mistake, so I check it back. So how many marks did you get for that page? And that ends the review, the total review of solving linear equations. And there's many videos, 15 or 18 videos to do. So when you get it all done, total up the page on the bottom, put the total number over 50, convert it to a decimal, and change it to a percent. But again, over 50 means you double the numerator and you get your percent. Or divide 50 into that number, get a decimal, move your decimal 2 places to the right. So what score did you get? Hopefully you were okay. Everything went great. If you made errors, correct them. Go back and look at some of the videos to see where did I go wrong and where do I have to improve. The more work you do, the more practice you do, the better you get. So that brings us to the last page. I don't know where that one's gone, but he's got, there it is, the last page. Page that end on. If you like my video, click the subscribe button, which is here. Click the like button. And if you're a subscriber, click the notification bell because there are more videos coming your way. If you want to write a comment, go ahead on the video and visit my math website at www.mathfullyexplained.com. There I have 3 sections. Me tells you about my degrees and teaching experience. Section about videos talks about the teaching strategies you're going to use to help you learn your math. And the most important section is content, tells you the topics that I have online, the number of videos on each of those topics. And the black font is what's online right now on my YouTube channel, which is Math Fully Explained. And the red font is what will be there in the near future, because my videos are going from grade 7 and 8 up to 9, up to 10. I'm going to keep adding on when I can. So if you're in your grade 7 and 8, you could be with my videos for 4 years in high school. Thank you very much for listening to my video. Bye-bye.